This week I have 3 tips and tricks for mitten thumb pits and sweater armpits. I'm going to show you how to close, hide, and prevent the holes that you can get at the point where the thumb separates from the hand or the sleeve separates from the sweater. First, I'd like to explain how and why those holes occur. So if you'd like to jump right to the techniques, you can find a direct link down in the description. The holes don't occur because you're a terrible knitter who did something wrong. They occur because of the way stitches in knit fabric are interconnected. When you separate the thumb from the hand or the sleeve from the body, that interconnectedness is interrupted. Each pair of stitches has 2 different running threads that connect them together. Their own running thread at the base and then the running thread of the row above them at the heads. When the stitches for the mitten are separated for the thumb, these 2 stitches, which are connected at the base, are not connected at the heads to each other. This stitch, which is on the hand, is connected to the hand stitches above it. This stitch, which is part of the thumb, is connected to the thumb stitches, but they are not connected to each other, and that's what creates the hole. When we pick up stitches along a cast-on edge, we're going to be working in the opposite direction of the original fabric. So here we can see two columns of stitches right above the cast-on edge. So if we put one needle through here and one needle through here in the center of those stitches, and we turn the fabric upside down, what we see is that the V's are right here, and right here. And these now appear to be in between the stitches. So when we pick up 2 stitches, we'll either be offset to the right by half a stitch or offset to the left by half a stitch. So depending on which direction we're offset, the larger hole will be at the other end. So when we want to close these holes, the first thing we do is we check these picked up stitches, and we want to make sure that they're the same size as these other ones. Because you have the yarn tail can provide some slack that can get worked into these stitches. They can get enlarged. So before we do any closing up, we want to tighten up these stitches to make sure they are the same size as the other stitches. So we've done that. So now we're going to turn the work to the inside. Okay, so we've thread our yarn needle, and now we look at the hole. You can see all of these little bumps that surround the hole. So we're going to use our yarn needle, and we're going to trace that path all the way around. Come here, and I'm going to come through here. So I've come all the way around, and now I'm just going to pull that tight. Just like you would do with a hat, you want to go around those stitches a second time. So I'm going to come back through here, here, and I think this is the last one here. So you come through a second time, so then you can come look at it from the right side of the work, and you can see that that hole isn't there anymore. There's just not a hole there. So then after you do the first one, then you would weave in your yarn tail the few stitches over until you can get to this second smaller hole, and you could cinch that one up as well. I mentioned earlier that the holes occur because the 2 stitches at the separating point are not connected across the heads. You can use duplicate stitch across the stitches above the stitches where the separation occurred to create that link that's missing. This is probably the least useful of the 3 tricks, but it is a nice one to know because it's a nice trick for fixing any kind of mistakes. So we're going to trace the path of the 2 stitches before the split and the 2 stitches after. If you haven't done duplicate stitch before, this is probably not the time to learn it or the way to learn it. If you already know it, then this could be useful. So now I'm going to try to trace the 2nd stitch, and here's the point where I'm going to connect these 2 stitches together. This is the running thread that does not currently exist at the heads of those stitches. Now I'm going to trace the path of the purple stitch. Now this one looks a little stretched out, so it's a little bigger. We have created that link right here that was missing before. And again, this isn't my favorite trick to use all of the time, but it is a useful tip to use some of the time. So the first thing you do is you get all of the stitches that were held in waste yarn back on your needles. Rather than picking up the same number of stitches that you cast on when you were rejoining in the round, I pick up 2 stitches more than that. In order to pick up 2 extra stitches along a cast on edge, we look at the cast on edge itself. You can see the diagonal lines, the diagonal strands that are created by the cast on. You look right into where the one on the right is pointing to. It goes right down into the center of the stitch on the far right. So there's number 1. Then we're going to pick up 1 through here. That's number 2. We go left again. That's number 3. And for the 4th one, we're going to go to the left and then up 1. So we'll come through this one. Will be the 4th one where you picked up. So I've picked up my 4 stitches, and now I'm going to work all of the thumb stitches that had been held on waste yarn. I'm going to work across all of them until I have 1 stitch left. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to decrease this last stitch together with the first stitch that was picked up. So I've done an SSK. It looks pretty sloppy because we've got waste yarn and we've got stitches pulling. It's not a problem. So I've got 3 more of the picked up stitches left to work. I'm going to work all of them except the last one. And now I'm going to decrease that one out by working it together with the first of the original thumb stitches. And I want this thumb stitch to be on top. So I do a right leaning decrease, so I do a knit 2 together. You can see that on this side there's just really no hole at all. Now you can see a little bit on this side, there's a tiny amount of hole, and but that's also where your yarn tail is, and you're going to have to weave that yarn tail in anyway, so you could use that opportunity to just go circle around that little hole on the inside and cinch it up the way I showed in the first tip.